The latest jailbreak season has given us the Proto 08, a pretty cool vehicle. But surprisingly, it is now the 20th season vehicle in Jailbreak. How does it stack up against the many other predecessors? I'm going to answer that question by ranking it with every other season vehicle in Jailbreak. Keep in mind, I don't rank purely based on stats, I take other things into account. Anyways, let's get started. Easily coming in last place for me is the Mini Cooper. When it was available for purchase, I thought it was a fine vehicle for beginners, but nothing amazing. When it was around, it had good acceleration compared to the other starter vehicles, so it did have some merit. I think this vehicle is a cute little car. Now though, this vehicle is incredibly mediocre. It doesn't look very good. It's not bad, especially considering the standards of the time, but it's not great either. Simply put, the stats of this vehicle are so mediocre that every other vehicle on this ranking outclasses it. Something that holds this vehicle back for me is it's not an original creation for the season. The devs just decided to add this vehicle back into the game as a season prize, which really rubbed me the wrong way. Therefore, in my opinion, this is the weakest season vehicle. Then we have the Goliath. Now for what it is, I think this vehicle has appropriate stats. I don't expect this to go to literally 400 miles per hour and have acceleration that rivals the concept car. However, the fact is the acceleration and launch and speed in general is just very mediocre. To me, it's not very useful in gameplay, as the slow acceleration means it's very easy for your opponents to stop you. I do absolutely love the design of the vehicle though. I think Shadow Samurai did an amazing job. The seating capacity is very nice. However, if I'm playing with a lot of people, there's no reason for me to use this vehicle when I could just use the monster truck or the army heli, which are much faster and have less drawbacks. Again, this is a massive tank. I don't think the stats should be changed. I think they're perfectly appropriate for what it's supposed to be. However, this just means I'm not that interested in using it, and there's stuff I'll use instead. Up next we have the Jackrabbit. I think this vehicle was implemented really well. I wouldn't really change anything about it. It's just not one I find myself using very much. Ed did a great job designing it, but it's just not one of my favorites looks wise. Also stats wise, it's fine but not that great. As you can see, this is not a vehicle I've used very much. Off-roading is good, so it's fun to drive around mountains and over rough terrain with this vehicle. But other than that, there's not much I can really say about this. Therefore, it's one of my least favorite season vehicles. Up next we have the Macaron. Out of the 4 Bugattis in the game, it is easily the weakest one, and it's one of the weakest supercars in general. Therefore, I haven't been compelled to use it very much. In my opinion, the slower acceleration of this vehicle and the slower top speed do hold me back from using it, especially compared to other supercars which are way better. Shadow Samurai revealed he suggested a speed buff to the vehicle, but Asimo declined it for some reason. I think a speed buff for this vehicle would do so much good, and it would make myself and many other people like it a lot more. I do like the design a lot. In particular, I love the headlights, and I think the back is really well designed. I don't think this is a bad vehicle, but I do think the stats are not as good as they should be, and I think a buff would go a long way. Then we have the Bandit. This is a pretty decent vehicle stats wise, and I think it looks pretty good. I like that the game has another muscle car. I think it's pretty stylish. However, it's not a vehicle I've been compelled to use very much, and I have a feeling it's going to end up becoming one of the most forgotten jailbreak vehicles. It's only been a couple months, and I personally have seen very few people using this vehicle in the main game. And that makes perfect sense to me because this vehicle is totally fine. I think the stats are appropriate and the looks are pretty good. But for me, it's just kind of forgettable and I'm never really compelled to use it. So unfortunately, this is as high as I can put it. Next, we have the Tiny Toy Car. This is a really nice bonus addition to Season 11 and I'm very happy we got it. On level 5 engine, it accelerates insanely quickly and it's a lot of fun to just zip around with. This is a vehicle I'd consider more fun than good. Since its addition, I've never been compelled to use it all that much in actual gameplay. However, for zipping around the city, it's really fun, and again, it's a nice bonus prize. I want more seasons to add secondary vehicles as maybe a level 8 prize. They don't need to be that good, they can just be a fun bonus addition. Next up, the R8. Now if you guys have seen any of my previous season vehicle rankings, you'll know that I used to consider this one of the worst season vehicles, and I generally wasn't a big fan of it. I thought the stats were not very good, and I still think it doesn't look that great. However, it got a pretty substantial buff in speed, and that made me admire it a lot more. The acceleration and top speed are so much better now, and this vehicle is actually competent. Again, this isn't a vehicle I choose to use very much, but it isn't a bad collectible to have, and it's a pretty decent relic of Jailbreak's past. Next, the Beam Hybrid. The first vehicle to kick off the new season system wasn't very well received at first since people thought the stats were a disappointment. However, since the beginning, I've always really enjoyed this vehicle. I think it looks really nice. It has a good amount of detail in the interior and the exterior, and while the stats are on the lower end of season vehicles, they're still not bad, and I think this is a fun vehicle. With trading, I feel like this vehicle has gotten the love and attention it deserves, and it's still a vehicle I really enjoy. After that, we've got the Bloxy. This vehicle had a lot of controversy when it was added, and I was one of the people that was disappointed it was chosen over the controller. However, I've come to appreciate and enjoy this vehicle. Again, it's not one I use all that much, but the stats are pretty nice, and the unique look of this really elevates it for me. I'm a big fan of Lego in real life, and I think it's really cool how we have a Lego car in game. The stats here, while they're not amazing, are still pretty good. So yeah, this is a fun vehicle to take for a spin every now and then. After that, we have the Raptor. Like the R8, this is a vehicle that on season rankings I would rate pretty low. However, I've actually warmed up to this vehicle quite a bit due to a recent buff. I like pickup trucks a lot, so I really appreciate the look of this vehicle. I thought it was one of the better looking OG vehicles. With a decent speed and large seating capacity, I think it is a great vehicle for teams. The Texas Chads stay winning. We have now reached the top 10 with the Banana Car. Now, this was also a vehicle that I had rated pretty low on past season rankings. It was just too wacky and weird for my taste. However, I've come to really appreciate the uniqueness of the vehicle. It's a lot of fun to drive due to the slippery nature. It's a fun vehicle for times when I'm playing with two other people, and I think it's better at this purpose than the R8 because it looks better and it's faster. And it's actually one of the fastest season vehicles there is, which is pretty cool. You can reach a really good top speed here. In my opinion, this is actually a pretty unique and memorable vehicle, and it has some fun merits to it, so I've started to view it more favorably. Next, we've got the Crew Capsule. After the Celsior was added, I had believed this vehicle was kind of obsolete, but I do think it has its merits. Of course, since it's a spawnable flying vehicle, that gives it a lot of credit. But since it's smaller, it's a bit easier to climb over some objects, where the Celsior, since it's longer and kind of tilted downwards, has some more trouble. It's also pretty small and a pretty hard target for cops to hit, so if you want to make a quick escape, this is a tool I often use. Since this vehicle has first person enabled, it's much easier to drive as well, and it's less likely for me to get confused, which was a complaint I had before. I've come to really appreciate it as a handy escape tool. Next, we've got the Rattler. This was the first ever community creation added as a season vehicle, and in my opinion, it was a great start. This was a pretty original creation from Shadow Samurai. I love the creativity behind it. I like all the details it has. I love how as you accelerate, fire comes out of the valves, though I do wish fire didn't come out of the nose. The mixture of really solid stats as well as great looks really elevate this vehicle for me, and it has always been one of my favorites of the season vehicles. After that, we have the most recent season vehicle, the Proto 08. Speed Queen did an amazing job translating this vehicle into Jailbreak. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's definitely one of the best looking vehicles in the entire game. In my opinion, it's basically a better looking roadster. The acceleration is awesome, and it has a great top speed. Unfortunately though, I have a really big problem with this vehicle in that this vehicle potholes like crazy if it's on normal suspension. I get that you can change your suspension to go higher, but I like my vehicles on normal or high suspension since that's the best they look in my opinion, and I don't like that with the suspension I have to make a special exception with this vehicle where other vehicles are completely fine on the roads with normal suspension, which compromises the looks. However, this is definitely a nitpick, and overall I think this vehicle is awesome. Up next, the Torpedo. Now I know some of you guys are literally shaking and crying right now since this vehicle is not number one, so let me explain why. I absolutely hate how this vehicle looks. Ever since it was added, I've always thought it looks really ugly. The front is just way too smooth and lacks the detail of the IRL counterpart, even when you take into account it being made before interiors were a thing. Now, there's a reason why this vehicle is so highly regarded, and that's due to the amazing top speed. However, I feel even that is overrated because you're pretty much never going to fully reach it. The acceleration is just a tad bit too slow for me, so that's why I don't find myself using it much due to the stats. However, I do respect the stats of it quite a bit, and I don't think the vehicle's reputation is unwarranted in that regard. However, the look of this vehicle has really held it back for me. Kicking off the top 5, we have the Volt 4x4. This was the logical next step after the Volt bike the game already had, and I absolutely loved it. I've always found this to be a great looking vehicle. It's such a beast and a force to be reckoned with. I also like that it got a buff in launch. That helps deal with the lackluster acceleration a little bit. Also, the top speed is great. With the launch buff, it's much easier to reach the top speed. To be honest, the looks are the main reason why I like this vehicle so much, but I think it has some really solid stats to back it up. Next, we got the Icebreaker. I think this vehicle looks really good, and it has great acceleration. This is basically a roadster for teams. I think this is a solid, reliable vehicle that can fit a lot of people, and I can reach the top speed of it pretty quickly. Also, I put this vehicle ahead of the Proto 08 because it does not pothole nearly as much, even though it's on the same suspension height. This is a vehicle I use often whenever I'm playing with several people, so I really appreciate it. Kicking off the top 3, we have the Celsior. This vehicle is absolutely fantastic. It's spawnable, and it seats 4 people, meaning this is a really good getaway vehicle for teams of 4 people. It also has great stats as well, in my opinion. Though it's not as effective in escaping cops due to the larger size, and it does have a little bit of trouble traversing terrain due to the lower hover height, it's still able to manage, and the faster top speed compared to the crew capsule means it's better suited for gameplay and traveling from one place to another, in my opinion. I know the look of this vehicle was controversial, but I felt it really fitted the futuristic theme, and I've always really appreciated the vibe of it. For our penultimate vehicle, we have the Batmobile. This is another one that I've always loved since its inception. I like the Batman character a lot, and I love the Dark Knight trilogy, so I really dig this vehicle. It's a great way to represent Batman in-game when you're driving around. I've always felt this vehicle had really solid stats. I did appreciate the pretty good acceleration it had, and I definitely preferred the easier maneuverability this vehicle offered compared to the Torpedo, which is a little bit difficult to control when you reach the higher top speed. However, this vehicle got a buff in July, which made me love it even more. As you guys know, when you reach top speed of over 170, it kicks into overdrive, rapidly accelerating this vehicle over 200 miles per hour. This is a pretty fun feature in my opinion, and it made it even more reliable to use in terms of gameplay. So yeah, that's why I think it's in second place. But the best season vehicle to this day is still the Bugatti Bolide. I don't know if any other season vehicle will ever beat this one. It looks amazing visually, as to be expected from Rally Subby, and the stats are amazing. It has great launch and acceleration, and it reaches its top speed really quickly. It also has great handling and grip, much better than the other Bugattis. In my eyes, this is the ultimate example of a perfect jailbreak vehicle, and balances fantastic stats with great looks, and it's very fun to drive. Therefore, it comes in number 1. But that's going to wrap up my latest ranking of every season vehicle in Jailbreak. What do you think? Which ones are your favorites or least favorites? How does the Proto 08 compare against the other 19 vehicles we already have? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Make sure to like and subscribe, blah blah blah, and I hope to see you later. Bye bye.